Thank you very much. Hello, everyone. Thank you very much for your invitation and for giving me this opportunity. My presentation is about indigenous knowledge in participatory plant breeding. And would you please move to the next slide? Thank you. As we know, most of the poor live in rural area, and most of the rural poor are smallholders and family farmers and small-scale farmers. It means that 95% of the rural poor live in East Asia, South Asia, and some of them sub-Saharan Africa. The worldwide population of smallholder farmers is estimated at 450 million, with about 350 million in Asia, and just 100 million live in South and Southeast Asia. Therefore, a large number of small farmers and poor small scale farmers live in Asia. As I am indigenous representative of Asia, so my presentation is also focused on the indigenous peoples and the small scale farmers in Asia. Would you please go to the next slide? Thank you. The farm size in Asia is less than 5 hectare. And the next, please. In 2022, Asia was home to 55% of the people in the world affected by hunger, about 402 million people, and 270 million self-recognized indigenous peoples. Next slide, please. Malnourishment and undernourishment are not the only food-related issues in my region, as adult obesity is also increasing. Next, please. In the world, various factors threaten food production system. This map shows the global distribution of risk associated with central agricultural production systems such as flood, sea level rise, water and land scarcity, pollution, erosion, loss of biodiversity, and other factors as well. Next slide, please. And by looking at Asia, we realize that all these risks are present in this part of the world too. Next slide, please. Biodiversity in general and agrobiodiversity in particular are in decline, and we are aware about it. Next slide, please. And genetic diversity is one of the 9 planetary boundaries and is marked as beyond the zone of uncertainty or high risk. Next slide, please. The yield of agricultural products is low, as the yield of wheat and barley in the most areas of Asia is less than 4 tons per hectare. Next slide, please. And climate change projections also indicate a decrease in the yield of agricultural products in the coming years and also in recent decades. Next slide, please. But what is the solution to facing these challenges that all of us are facing them? Next slide, please. Climate change, biodiversity loss, and hunger and malnourishment, and obesity and diabetes, and also water scarcity and drought and poverty are connected with each other and they are interrelated to each other. And seeds are related to all these challenges. Next slide, please. As we know, a production system that produces healthy food, sustainable ecosystem, and livelihood for small-scale farmers is achievable through the use of biodiversity. Next slide, please. But the major challenge is that indigenous peoples and farmers' access to genetic resources has been very limited in recent decades, and they need greater access to genetic materials. They also need the collaboration of scientists willing and able to draw on their respective strengths to create modern knowledge based on traditional and indigenous knowledge together. Both access to genetic resources and good faith cooperation with scientists are lacking in most parts of the world. Next slide, please. Participatory plant breeding and also evolutionary plant breeding are examples of traditional and indigenous initiatives to increase indigenous peoples and farmers' access to genetic resources and improve crop productivity and also crop adaptive capacity and resilience of farmers, small scale farmers, to climate related extreme events and stresses and other stresses and make real collaboration among stakeholders. Next slide, please. These initiatives are a model for giving a large number of farmers access to a significant amount of crop genetic diversity in a short time. In fact, the trials are moved from research stations to farmers' fields, and decisions are shared between breeders and researchers and small scale farmers and indigenous peoples. Also, these participatory processes help us to make a platform for reviving and evaluating genetic materials at local conditions with the participation of small scale farmers and indigenous peoples themselves. Next slide, please. The evolutionary plant breeding method is not new and was proposed in 1956 by an American agronomist and consists of making very big mixture of hundreds or even thousands of varieties and letting these mixtures evolve in their natural habitat. Evolutionary populations have the same meaning as bulk populations and composite crosses. I want to also add that even this knowledge, it is not for the past century. Our ancestors, our indigenous ancestors, knew how to mix different varieties and different seeds, and they cultivate all these varieties together as population. But new scientists, they name it for themselves, and they are using it under the name of themselves. But I want to add that it is not new. It is from a very long time ago, and our ancestors used to use evolutionary plant breeding themselves. Next slide, please. Evolutionary populations evolve differently under different conditions and stresses. Next slide, please. In this method, farmers and small-scale farmers plant and harvest evolutionary populations for several years, and in this condition, the populations evolve, gathering better with each harvest and slowly adapting to the environment around and including climate change. In the case of evolutionary plant breeding, we use the fundamental theorem of natural selection to our advantage. It is always possible to use these populations as a sort of germ plus bank to make selection for the participatory breeding. The small scale farmers or indigenous people peoples, along with researchers, select these seeds, and their selection is also very important in evolutionary plant breeding. It is possible to select spikes or plants from the main population every few years, and in this way, either create a subpopulation or achieve new varieties. Next slide, please. Research on evolutionary plant breeding on several crops, including wheat, barley, rice, beans, and corn, is being carried out in some Asian countries and also in Africa. And my organization, Senesta, is working on it, including in Iran, Jordan, Nepal, Bhutan, and possibly in part of Syria, and farmers have access to the evolutionary populations and plant them in their fields. Next slide, please. Next, please. Thank you. These population can provide the market with more nutrition, food, and feed, and being high quality and nutrition is one of the main benefits of the products made out of these mixtures and evolutionary plant breeding. And the last one, please. Therefore, to develop this new initiative, we must change some agricultural research processes and revise seed regulations and laws according to today's needs and challenges, and accelerate the movement from uniformity to diversity. Together, these revisions can help increase the production of agricultural products while reducing hunger on a significant scale. Thank you very much.